Hey everybody, welcome back to Mixing Music Analog and mixingmusicanalog.com, and here on our YouTube channel. And we have our good buddy Dave over here to my right, to your left, came all the way up from New York again, and we're going to do another set of videos. So in this video, we're going to do something really cool. We are going to do another hardware to plug-in comparison. We're going to compare the Audioscape 76A Blue Stripe. We're going to compare the sound of that to two very famous and popular plug-in 1176 Blue Stripe, the Universal Audio, and then the Waves CLA Blue Stripe, which you'll see somewhere on the screen in a minute or two. So we have a kick snare combination going to a bus that we're going to listen to this on and see what they sound like and how they sound and if they sound and so far and whatever. So make sure you like, share, subscribe, and hit the old thanks button if this video helps you in any way, shape, or form. Now, here's what we want to talk about for just a few minutes before we dive into the comparison, because it's an interesting thing that we learned. And as we're learning things about hardware, plugins, analog, digital, we're trying to share these experiences with you best we can. So this test originally was going to be the Black Lion Audio Bluey hardware compressor, which we have over there in the rack. And we were going to compare that to the CLA76 Bluey plug-in by Waves, because we were under the assumption, or maybe we still are, we're not sure, but we went into this thinking that the Waves 1176 Bluey 76 CLA76 was based on Chris Lord-Alge's #1 Bluey hardware compressor, which is exactly what the Black Lion Audio Bluey compressor is modeled after. And we, off camera, we went and did the setup. We were getting everything level matched and doing all the routing and all the things that we do to do these comparisons for you. And what we learned was what, Dave?
They are not the same.
They
are not even close. There is absolutely no way that that plugin is based on that compressor. There's no way. They're so completely different that to try to even make them sound the same was virtually impossible.
Right, so what we tried to do is we tried to get the settings, even if the physical knobs on the plugin versus the hardware were different, to try to get the two compressors to even react somewhat similarly, and they simply just do not. So what we thought it wouldn't be a fair video. There's nothing to really compare. It's like comparing apples to grapes. I mean, it's not even, it's like apples to broccoli. It's not even in the same food group.
There's no way.
No way those two things are even similar. So what we think we determined, we even went online and got on the interwebs and did a little bit of Google search. We don't believe that the Waves CLA76 Bluey plugin is modeled after Chris Lord-Alge's famous #1. Now, Chris Lord-Alge has 4 blue stripes in his rack. One of those blue stripes that he calls his #1, the thing that's on every lead vocal that he does, is the actual physical unit that Black Lion Audio on their Bluey modeled against. And when you read the Black Lion Audio website and you start to do some research, you find out that when they opened up that unit and they went to do an analysis of the circuitry inside, they realized that Chris Lord-Alge's #1 technically, I guess, is broken. There's parts of it that was been modified and based on component shortages over the years, that the Chris Lord-Alge's #1, there's actually something that's not technically correct, and therefore is what it gives it their that real unique sound. So they actually modeled the Bluey after the physical #1, broken parts and all, for lack of a better term. That's why that compressor sounds so radically different than any other blue stripe, is because of the way his unit has been modified over the years, and there's something that's different about it.
And still possibly broken.
Technically, I guess they said jokingly, it's actually something's wrong with it, but Chris Lord-Alge said, don't touch it, because that's
don't mess with that.
That's why it sounds the way it sounds, and it sounds great. We'll do another video just on the Bluey in and of itself at one point, but what we discovered was that this Waves plugin is not modeled on that unit. If the Black Lion Audio hardware truly sounds the same as his #1, then there's no way that that plugin is modeled after that. So what we're thinking maybe is that the CLA76 Bluey might be modeled after one of his other 3 that he has in his rack that's more conventional, correct, whatever you want to call it. So we decided that we can't do that test. Really doesn't. There
was no way to actually do that comparison.
Not really. So what we then said is, well, what else? Let's try something else. So then we said, well, what if we compared the Audioscape Blue Stripe, the 76A, to the plugins, do they sound more similar? And what we found was, yes, they do.
They're in the family.
They react the same. They're not technically broken like the Bluey. It's a totally different animal. And again, in one video, maybe we'll compare the 76A to the Bluey just so people can hear, well, what the hell are they talking about? What is so different?
Yeah.
So for this video, we kind of said, okay, let's just go back to, does the 76 hardware, the Bluey by Audioscape, the 76A, how does that compare to two of the plugins? Because they sound more close to the two plugins. So that's what the test is today. I know that's a long intro. Apologize. But again, as we're learning, we're trying to just share our experience and say, whoa, we learned something really cool today. We would not have learned that if we didn't go through that process. So hopefully that helps you guys.
We spent a lot of time fiddling around with those compressors and the plugins.
Almost an hour.
Yeah, and finally at the end, the conclusion was we can't do this video. There's no comparison here.
It's not similar. It's too different. So anyway, so we said, let's just go back to our Audioscape 76A, which we know sounds great. We've done other videos on that. You can go check the channel. And let's compare it to two plugins, and let's just get back to how does the hardware sound against the plugins? What's the difference? So what we have in Studio One on the screen here is we're going to compare these to two popular, and the only two I have on this system, quite frankly, Blue Stripe plugins. We have the Universal Audio Blue Stripe here, and then we have, again, we talk about the CLA76 Bluey. Now what you'll see is that the attack and release settings are slightly different on these two plugins to the hardware, because what we found was that, these plugins are modeled after two different physical units. We don't know what two units there are, and the attack and release times may react a little different. So what we wanted to do was make sure that the compressors were reacting the same, regardless of what settings they were, to get the same amount of compression. Only thing that's different is that one plugin has a little bit of a slower release than the other, and a little bit slower attack than the other, but it's really close, and you'll see once we do the test, the way the meter is working and the way the attack and release are responding is the same.
And also on the Blue Stripe, on the actual hardware unit, we sped the attack time up to try to match the slowest attack on the Blue Stripe from Waves. We had to speed that attack time up. So the attack time on the hardware unit is actually on 3. On the UA, it's on 2, and on the Waves one, it's on 1. To get basically all reacting the same way.
Right, that was our challenge. Was how do we make sure that the release is releasing about the same speed, regardless of what the dial says, right?
And the attacks are basically attacking at the same speed. So there's obvious differences between all three.
Right.
But the idea was to make them all react or as close to the same as we could, and have the same level of compression on all three of them as we could. It's a trick.
It is. It was definitely a little tricky, and then we level matched the audio output volume, so we have that same level.
Yeah, we do have a slight difference in the faders to get the output matched.
So we tried to do the best we can to try to do this. So anyway, so what we have on the screen here is we're doing a kick snare combination. So the first set of tracks here in this aqua color, we have a kick and a snare blended to a bus here, and that's going out to the hardware. You'll see that at the beginning here, hardware. That's going to the Audioscape 76A hardware. And then brown, we have a kick snare. Again, same kick and snare. We've got the blend between the kick and the snare, identical, going to a bus, and that has these two plugins on it, the Universal Audio and the Waves plugin. So what your job, again, in this video, is to keep your eye on the solo button between the two buses. That's gonna be the difference. One combination is gonna be the hardware, one combination is gonna be the plugins. We're gonna start with, we'll go left to right here, and we'll start with the Universal Audio plugin first. We'll leave them both on the screen, but we're gonna compare to the UA plugin first to the hardware. So let's do that. So that's what we're gonna do. Just kick and snare, that's all we have going on here. There should be a camera on the actual hardware. We'll put that up.
It'll be on the screen somewhere.
Yeah, somewhere, hopefully, I don't know. So here we go. So keep your eye on the solo buttons here. We're gonna start off with the hardware, and then we're gonna move over to the plugin, which for this will be the Universal Audio 1176.
Oh.
Here we go.
there's way more room, there's just way more room sound, way more space in the hardware than there is in the plug-in. The plug-in sounds definitely flat compared to the hardware.
Yeah, so the thing that we instantly noticed was that the hardware's got way more of this going on, and the plug-in is like very linear, very flat.
The plug-in is also way more in your face.
Way more in your face, right? There's the hardware seems to just have more depth, more aggression, way different. So
slightly more open top end as well.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
So
let's listen to that again so you guys can hear what we're hearing. Hopefully, again, hopefully you're using a good set of headphones and/or studio monitors. We're going to start with the hardware, and then we're going to go over to the plugin. Here we go. Yeah, it's just it's bigger, it's fatter, it's way more 3D to me than the plugin.
Like even like the snare ring.
Yeah, the ring. Yeah, the
snare ring is way more natural on the hardware than it is in the plugin. The plugin is flattening that ring out and actually bringing it more forward, but not in a pleasant way, you know, and compared to the hardware. And believe me, that plugin actually sounds pretty good. I mean, I'm not going to say that plugin sounds bad, but the hardware sounds better.
Yeah, to me it does too.
Yeah.
So now before we change any attack and release settings, we're just going to switch over to the Waves one now, because we already got this. So I'm going to bypass the universal audio and I'm going to open up the Waves. So now when we're listening, you're listening to the hardware versus the CLA76, the Bluey by Waves, the one to the right. Okay, so here we go. We'll start with the hardware.
Yeah, you know, I mean, the Waves plugin is less livelier than the UA plugin is against the hardware. It's flatter, you know, than the UA one is. I mean, we really don't want to turn this into a plugin comparison.
Yeah, no, it's not.
But you know, neither one of the plugins is even remotely close in space to the hardware.
Yeah, so the plugins, we compared them off camera to each other. They're very similar, but to the hardware, there's absolutely no comparison. To me,
none.
Now, could you tweak the living daylights out of the plugin to get it a little bit more like the hardware? Well, without doing anything crazy here, just on the CLA, if you wanted, because it sounds like the hardware is more compressed, giving more of that kind of parallel thing happening. So if you were to just take the, what do we have? We're on a slow attack right now.
Slowest attack.
So we would have to compress this even more
to get to that same level.
Right, so if I just did that and just played back the waves. But even doing that, it's you even doing that, the waves, now we're compressing about 10, almost 12 dB of compression on the plugin, but it doesn't have that. It still stays that very linear, compact, and very forward.
Yeah.
It doesn't have that sense of depth at all.
But also too, at that compression setting, it sounds like it's compressing to the same level as the hardware is at 5.
Right.
So that's that's another interesting part of it is, to get the compression to sound the same, you're absolutely crushing the plugin compared to the hardware, which is something that I've said before about hardware compressors in general. Is it seems to me that you can push a hardware compressor harder and not make it sound bad, whereas if you push a plugin that hard, they don't sound as good.
Yeah, sometimes they start to fall apart.
Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes they start to fall apart.
Yeah, so like here you are with this thing's practically, practically needling, like practically pinning the needle to get the same feel as you're getting out of a hardware unit at, basically standing the needle straight up.
Yeah, but even that, it still doesn't sound as doesn't sound as good as the hardware.
There's no depth there at all.
There's no depth there at all. So listen to that again, guys. So we go back to the hardware, and then we're only looking at the waves now. Let's just close the universal audio just to keep it, so you're not distracted. So here is 76A hardware. So it sounds like to me, even though the compression is a little more similar in style, the plugin, it just chokes the snare, and it's because we're hitting it so hard. Whereas on the 76A, you're not hitting it nearly as hard, but it's still got that openness. It doesn't feel like it's clamping down too much.
Yeah.
So we tried to adjust these plugins to make it sound like the hardware. We just can't get it to sound like that. It just doesn't sound that good. It just doesn't. Not to me, it doesn't. So if you want to know, does a hardware 76, at least the 76 that we have, the one by Audioscape, how does it sound compared to two plugins? And I think so far, out of all the hardware to plugin comparisons that we've done, this one is the biggest difference.
Yeah, this is the most glaring difference between the two. Is like, no matter what else, whatever other plugin comparison we've done, they've been a lot closer than this. The gap is ridiculous.
Yeah, so to us, to me, that 76 hardware sounds way better than these two plugins do. Yeah. As far as, again, better meaning it's got more depth, it's got more life, it's got more energy, it doesn't feel flat and too linear, and it doesn't feel choked out, even at all. And if you back off, even if you back off the compression on the 76 to where it's only hitting, again, about 3 dB or so, it's not even close.
Yeah, when you're on the hardware, it sounds like you're in the room with the drum kit, and when you're listening to the plugin, it's like you're watching a cartoon.
Okay.
That's mean, okay? That was really mean, okay? But that's the first thing that's popped in my head was like, when I'm on the hardware, I'm standing next to the drum kit, and when I listen to the plugin, I'm watching a cartoon.
Okay.
So, is it mean? Yeah, but it's what I feel.
Okay, then that's fair. So yeah, it's a big difference. So again, let us know below what you guys think. Again, I know it was really challenging. There's no way to just put everything at the same settings and have it work. We tried that. It just doesn't work. No matter how we adjust those two particular plugins, to me, and now to Dave, it sounds like, again, that hardware sounds way more rich, way more energetic, way more 3D. The plugin's very flat and linear up front. They're not bad plugins. We've used these plugins in the box a lot.
Yeah.
But when you compare them to that hardware, at least this particular Blue Stripe.
Whenever I want a Blue Stripe plugin, that's the one I reach for.
Yeah,
So,
I've used that one. I've used it a lot.
Yeah,
I've used it a lot.
but now I'm sitting here going, wow, okay, I mean, it's a completely different world.
Completely different. Completely different. So we're only listening to it on a kick snare combo. We're not listening to it on a bunch of different sources. We wanted to try to, because we knew this video was going to be a little longer, we figured we'd just do it on one source. We're going to actually off camera maybe listen to it on a couple different things. And if we see anything different than what, or hear anything different,
We'll come back.
then we'll come back and we'll show you what we've done to see if we could. But if it's the same kind of thing where it's just totally night and day, then we'll probably leave it at this, just to try to keep this video somewhat reasonably in length.
And we're back.
We're back. So if you stuck around this long, it's like an Easter egg on the DVD.
Isn't it?
This is the Easter egg.
Yeah.
So, as we said at the end of the last section there, we heard a big difference in the kick snare combo drum thing. So then off camera, we set up the same test with bass to see, is it that stark of a difference or is it a lot closer? And what we found, it's a lot closer. So let's talk about what we've got set up here. So here in Studio One, we have two bass tracks. Maybe I should change one of these colors a little bit. So the purple bass is the hardware, 76A. Blue is the plugins. And the two plugins that we are looking at, same as before, we have the Universal Audio Blue Stripe, which we'll bring to listen to first. And then we have the Waves CLA76. It's in bypass mode right now. So we're going to switch back and forth between the hardware, which will be the Universal Audio, and the plugin, and the hardware, which is the 76A. So now how do we have the compressor set up, Dave, today?
Straight up the middle on attack and release on all of them, and we're hitting it about 5 to 7, 10 on the really heavy hits. We're hitting it hard.
So we're trying that. We're doing a lot of compression on this. We slowed up. We got a medium style attack and release just to see what the difference is. So keep your eye on the solo, but geez, I hate when I do that, Dave. Every single time I'm doing that. Doing this every single time. Probably because I have to pin it. That's, oops, not that. Not quantize it. Okay, there we go.
There you go.
So keep your eye on the solo button. The purple is the hardware. The blue is the plugin. Here we go.
They are very, very close. What I'm finding interesting on that listen is that the plug-in is bringing a little bit of the buzziness out of the bass that the hardware is forgiving. The hardware is forgiving that buzziness, whereas the plug-in is bringing it more forward. But tonally, they're very, very close. The hardware, I don't know exactly how to describe it, but I'm just hearing a little bit more space in the hardware, but not depth. You know what I mean? It's like, it's not very deep. It's interesting that this is a very non-transient, very sustained instrument, and the differences that we heard in the drums are gone.
Yeah, and then we said maybe that's because in the drums we're talking about the room. It's a kick snare thing. There was a lot of room and bleed between that, and that just brought out the room of the drums. Where here it's more direct.
Yeah.
And so it seems a lot closer. I mean, I think the hardware seems a little bit rounder on the bottom, but I mean, again, it's very, very subtle in its sound. At least to me, it is. Let's try that now with the that was with the Universal Audio. Now we're gonna bypass that and we're gonna do the same test, but we're gonna use the CLA by Waves. So let's go ahead and we'll start with the hardware in purple, then we'll go over to the CLA. Here we go.
Yeah, there's almost no difference there at
I
all.
mean, I don't know what you guys think. You can leave comments below. I don't really hear any difference in that. I mean, in the room here, it sounds pretty close. I mean, really
Yeah.
identical. I mean, you could swap one out for the other and nobody would be able to tell the difference. At least I don't think so.
Agreed. Yeah. I mean, and honestly, a Blue Stripe 1176 isn't something I would pick for a bass track in general anyway, but you know, they're basically reacting the same as the hardware.
Yep.
You're hearing, you know, like it is, like I said, the slight buzziness that you're hearing from the plugin that the hardware is forgiving. I don't know what to attribute that to, but it's there in my ears anyway. And but other than that, I mean, you have to be fair to the plugins now in this comparison is to say, hey, they're very close.
Yeah, in
You know?
this particular example, they're very close. Where in the
Yeah.
other example, way different.
Yeah.
Way different.
Yeah, and like I said, settings wise, you know, they're all set the same. They were all reacting the same on the drum buses. So it's like, you know, it's definitely got a lot more to do with the program material than it does the actual hardware versus plugin in this instance.
Yeah, I would agree.
You know?
I would agree.
So yeah,
I would absolutely agree. So I think what we're going to do, we might have to get the acoustic guitar out and try that track now.
Yeah, we may have to.
Because now we got what's a score, even score, 1-1.
Yeah. Yep.
Plug-in hardware, each of them got a point on the board. So by the magic of television, we're going to try to take a break here. We'll get the acoustic guitar out there and see if there's any difference there as well. And then we'll wrap up this video. So we'll see you guys in a few minutes. Okay, we're back again. So last part of the test, I promise. So we have acoustic guitar now. So we're going to compare that same heavily strummed acoustic guitar that we've done in other videos, and we're going to compare it to the same two plugins. So in Studio One, and maybe I'll change let me pin both of these again. Now let's change the color of the first one so they're not both purple. So your hardware is green, the 76A, the plugin is purple. We're going to start with the universal audio compressor here. And how do we have things set, Dave, on our compressors?
Fast attack, fast release, we're crushing it. We're getting up to -10. I did have to back the release off on the Waves plugin a little bit to get the release times to match to the hardware and the universal audio plugin.
Okay, so we're trying to get things to react the same way, and this is a very dynamic, very dig-in kind of a strumming thing. So let's listen to the difference. So keep your eye on the solo button. The green is the hardware, the purple is the plugin. We're going to start with the hardware and compare it to the Universal Audio 76. Here we go. What do you hear there?
Yeah, they're close, not as close as they were on the bass. On the hardware, there is more depth to it. I'm hearing more top end sparkle to it a little bit. But what I noticed too is like when he stops, when he hits a rest, the hardware just naturally decays, whereas the plugin just knocks right off. And that's what the release is set, you know, fast, and they're very close to the way they're releasing. So the hardware is definitely gentler on the release, even at its fastest setting.
Yeah, so I hear, the hardware again has that kind of little bit more of that three-dimensional thing than the plugin on this one, but you're right, it's not as stark of the thing that we did with the drums, but it's certainly not as close as it was on the bass. So it's interesting. So it really depends on the material and how you're pushing this thing. Yeah. So, but I definitely, and I would say there's a little bit more upper mids in the hardware too. At least that's how I feel like it sounds in the room. Yeah. So now let's compare it to the Waves one here. So we'll bypass the universal audio. So now we're going to be listening hardware to the Waves CLA76. Here we go. We'll start with the hardware. You know what I'm hearing here now? I'm thinking as I'm listening, I hear more of the room in the hardware. And this is where I think you said too, the reason why it was such a stark difference on the drums and the kick snare combination was because of the room.
Yes.
The hardware really brought out the richness of the room.
Yes.
And I could hear it here as well, but it's more subtle because this was recorded with, you know, in a probably a tighter room with a microphone only maybe a few feet away from the guitar itself.
Plus this is very busy and there's not a lot of gaps in there, but you can hear the room sound when he rests. You know what I mean? Whereas with the plug-in, it flattens out that room.
Yeah, it really does. So you don't hear that depth in the room at all with the plug-in, but with the hardware, it's absolutely there. Yeah. So it's giving us that same. I feel like it's the same thing I was hearing with the drums, but just a lot lesser. Yeah. Lot less of it. But with the bass, because if the bass was maybe recorded direct, right? Or if it was a microphone right up on a bass cabinet.
Yeah, there's no room.
There's no room there.
Yeah.
And so that's the difference. Yeah. So now that we've kind of identified that, viewers at home, keep that, listen for that now. So we're going to start on the hardware and listen to when he stops. You hear the room, and even while he's still kind of digging in, it feels more three-dimensional because we're hearing more of the room. We're hearing more of the space around it. So listen for that. Here's the hardware.
It's almost like you're turning a reverb on and off.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah,
it's very subtle, but it's almost like you're turning a reverb on and off.
Right, but that's that three-dimensional. That's that depth thing. I mean, that's what reverb does. It adds depth. I mean, that's exactly what we're hearing. It sounds to me like we hear the actual microphone in the room with the hardware, whereas with the plug-in, it almost seems like it's a direct signal.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny. Like it's like I know I said in the drum one that it was like being in the room with the drums and then watching a cartoon. This is like being in the room with the guitar player and watching the guitar player on TV.
Yeah, You know, that's not. Yeah, I would agree. Yeah. It really is. It's like standing in the room with the guitar player playing versus watching it on television, where you don't have that. You don't feel like you're in the room with the player with the plug-in, but with the hardware you do.
Yeah.
I don't know. We're trying to give you guys our best.
Yeah,
we're trying to give you what does the sensation really feel like in sounds. Yeah. And again, how it comes across on YouTube, I don't know, because you're watching us on TV. You're not in the room with us.
Yeah, and then you got the YouTube compression and everything else. Yeah. On this track especially, I'm imagining that the YouTube compression is probably killing a lot of what we're hearing.
Maybe, because it is more subtle.
It is really subtle compared to what was happening on the drums.
So now that we're talking this out live on camera, that's why when I feel like the hardware's always got this three-dimensional thing, and I always keep saying the plugin is linear and it's flat this way as opposed to this depth thing. That's what it is. At least in this case, that's what it is. We're hearing the room around the acoustic guitar more so with the hardware. With the plugins, like we don't hear it at all. It's like not there.
It flattens it out. It's like I said, it's like being in the room and then watching a guy on TV.
It's different.
The TV's two-dimensional. The room is three-dimensional. You're in the same space, whereas TV, you're not. Yeah. So, it's like, it is, but again, what we're hearing in here is a very subtle difference. I'm using very broad terms to describe a subtle difference. I will grant that.
It's hard. It's hard to. We're trying to really convey, honestly, what we're hearing, and we don't. We're not favorites of one over the. We're not here trying to.
I don't have a dog in this.
No. We're just trying to say, hey, these two plugins that you guys have seen on the screen, both of us, I've used both of these things in hundreds and hundreds of mixes over the years. Yeah, and they sound really good.
They sound fine.
It's not until you put it right next to the hardware where you go, oh. There's the difference. Now, here's the thing, and then we'll wrap up the video because we know it's long, guys, but you know what? We don't care. We don't script these things. We do these things right off the cuff and try to give you our honest reactions to what we're hearing.
Yep.
So like it or lump it, but, right?
Yeah, and then sometimes we have to struggle for the words,
Sometimes we have to struggle for the words. Again, we're listening to one instance of hardware versus one instance of a plugin, and we're hearing that little bit of that depth difference, right, that we just been describing. Now, when you take that across an entire mix and you're listening to 40 tracks of that kind of thing, where you're putting 40 tracks through hardware, 15 of those tracks are going through different compressors in the rack. It's all that little depth dimension that we just described here, compounded times however many tracks
it becomes
are in your
a
session.
very big thing.
That's why I think, at least as of today, that's why I feel like hardware has that thing, in that three-dimensional thing that plugins seem to come up a little short on, is because we're taking exactly what we're hearing here and we're compounding it across an entire session. And when you do it in the box, if everything is linear in the box, or most of the plugins are linear in the box, but in the hardware, you have these different variations of depth. The cumulative effect of all of that on a mix is why we go, that's what the sound is supposed to sound like, whatever that means, is because you're hearing what we're describing here across an entire mix.
Yes.
If that doesn't make sense to you, I'm sorry, we can't do a better job describing it to you.
Yeah, and like so we can't, and like as I've said 100 times too, so I'm sorry you can't be in the room hearing what we're hearing.
if you were hearing it, so here's the thing: if you're in the market for a piece of hardware, get yourself an 11.7, get yourself a 76 hardware.
Yeah,
you know, I mean that 76A I think is less than $1,000. Get that piece of hardware and do the same comparison with your 76 plugins in your DAW, and I think you're going to hear the difference. Now, again, you can twist and turn these knobs on both digital and analog a million ways and try to get them to sound the same and all that stuff. You can do all of that, but that's fine. But just right out of the box, dialing in how we would set the compressor up on these individual elements, this is the result we're getting. And I think you guys can do the same exact thing in your studio. You don't have to have a console to do this. The console is really not a player in this because both
tracks are running through the
console. So yes, you're getting a little of the sound of the SSL in there, but that's really not affecting our test.
But it's on both tracks.
But they're on both tracks, right? Yeah. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed watching this little video here that's now become 3 parts.
Yeah, this mess.
But hey, that's we're trying, right?
We're doing the best we can.
We're doing the best we can. So let us know in the comments below what you think. Again, we're going to do more tests like these in the future. Let us know in the comments, like, share, subscribe, all that happy stuff. And until the next time we meet, I've been Dave and he's been Dave with Mixing Music Analog, and we will see you guys really, really soon. Take care, everybody.
Peace, guys.